You see, every habit, good or bad, is a conversation in your brain. It's a loop, a rhythm your brain choreographs so seamlessly you stop noticing it. But once you understand how this loop works, you gain the power to rewrite the script. Chapter 1 is your invitation to unlock that power. Together, we're diving into the science, the hidden rules that govern why habits form, stick, and, most importantly, how they can be unlearned. Let me tell you a story. Picture someone. Let's call them Alex. Alex has been biting their nails for as long as they can remember. It's a crutch, a way to cope with stress. They've tried to stop a dozen times, promising, "This is the last time." But every time stress surfaces, the urge returns. Frustrated, Alex wonders, why can't I escape this thing when it's clearly ruining my body, my confidence, my life? Sound familiar? If so, you're not alone. The reason Alex keeps going back to nail biting, if you'll allow me a dramatic pause, lies in the intricate dance of your brain's reward system. Let's break it down. Every habit follows what we call the habit loop. Cue, routine, reward. That's it. 3 simple steps. But simplicity doesn't mean simplicity in execution. Take Alex's nail biting. Here's what happens. The cue is stress. The routine is biting the nails. The reward is the temporary relief from anxiety. Your brain, in its infinite wisdom, wires this loop into the deepest folds of your psyche. It's not about logic. It's about survival. Here's the kicker. Your brain doesn't care about consequences. Not the ones you see, anyway. It's hyper-focused on solving problems in the most efficient way possible. When you start biting your nails, your brain registers. Stress plus nail biting equals relief. It stamps this connection in your memory like a traveler carving a path through the forest. The deeper the trail, the less likely you are to wander off. That's why, even when you know biting your nails is bad, your brain still pulls you back. It's not being cruel. It's being practical. But here's the secret. The brain is malleable. It's not some rigid machine. It's a learning system. The same plasticity that forms bad habits can be harnessed to create new, lasting change. Let's dig into the neuroscience. Your brain has a region called the basal ganglia, a deep cluster of neurons involved in habit formation. This is where routines become automatic, where actions shift from conscious effort to autopilot. Imagine a chef who once had to think about every step of their signature dish, but, over time, can cook it with eyes closed. That's your brain's goal with habits, efficiency. It wants to conserve energy for the new stuff, the difficult stuff. Unfortunately, this means bad habits stick around like uninvited guests at a party. And then there's dopamine, the neurotransmitter of desire. When you engage in a habit, your brain releases a hit of dopamine, reinforcing the behavior. This is your brain's way of saying, hey, this worked, let's do it again. Even if the reward is tiny, like the relief from anxiety or the fleeting satisfaction of a sugar craving, your brain still cheers and builds the neural pathway stronger. But here's what you can't escape. Your brain doesn't ask permission to prioritize what keeps you safe, what solves problems, and what gives you relief. It's not judgmental, it's not malicious, it's just doing its job. So when you try to stop a habit cold turkey, like Alex who cuts their nails short to physically stop the behavior, the brain protests, "What's this? Where's my reward?" The frustration you feel is your brain's emergency mode, scrambling to find an alternative way to satisfy the old cue. This is why willpower alone is rarely enough. You've likely heard that habits are automatic, but understanding how they're automatic changes the game. Think of it like this. If you're running a marathon, trying to stop at mile 10 because you think you've reached the finish line is a setup for failure. You need a strategy designed by your brain's own biology, not against it. Let's circle back to Alex for a moment. After reading this book, and staying with me through Chapter 1, they begin to see their habit in a new light. It's not about willpower. It's about rewiring the loop. The same brain that formed the nail-biting habit can learn a new one. Instead of biting nails when stressed, Alex might take deep breaths. The cue remains stress. The routine shifts to a healthier action. The reward becomes the same relief, but achieved without damage. You see, the science of bad habits is not a mystery to be solved. It's a puzzle to be assembled with clarity and compassion. Every time you understand one piece of the brain's logic, you unlock a new lever to pull. The path to change isn't about brute strength. It's about intelligence. strategy, empathy for the system you're working with. So why do bad habits persist despite their negative consequences? Because your brain equates them with survival. It doesn't see a nail-biting habit as harmful, it sees it as a solution to a past problem. And solutions are rarely changed unless a better one comes along. Your job? Offer that better solution. That's what this book is for. Chapter 1 is your foundation. With its truths as your compass, you'll stop fighting your brain and begin collaborating with it. You'll move from frustration to freedom. But I'll say it again, this isn't a quick fix. It's a reprogramming project, a lifelong conversation with the most powerful computer you'll ever own. And as we step into Chapter 2, where you'll learn how to identify the cues that set your routines into motion, you'll begin to see that every great transformation starts with awareness. So let's pause here, breathe, reflect. You're not just reading about habits, you're becoming the architect of your own behavior. The science doesn't stop at curiosity. It becomes courage. And with that courage, you'll rewrite the story of your life, one habit at a time. You see, the first step in breaking any bad habit is not in the act itself. It's in the moment just before it. That's where the power lies. That's where you take control. And that moment is shaped by something we call triggers. Triggers are the invisible keys that turn on your bad habits like a light switch. But here's the thing. Once you understand your triggers, you can change the wiring of your brain. You can take back that moment and rewrite the story. Let me tell you a story that mirrors the journey of many of you. There's a young man, let's call him Alex, who struggled with a habit he couldn't seem to escape. Every time he came home from work, exhausted and stressed, he'd open the cupboard, grab a bag of cookies, and binge. He tried everything: willpower, guilt, even hiding the cookies. But the moment he walked through that door, the habit would kick in like clockwork. Then one day, he asked himself a simple question. Why do I eat these cookies? And he started to dig deeper. You see, this is the art of identifying your habit triggers. It's about peeling back the layers of why you do what you do. Triggers fall into 3 broad categories: environmental, emotional, and social cues. Let's break them down. Environmental triggers are the most obvious. They're the places, objects, or even specific times of day that your brain has learned to associate with a habit. For Alex, the trigger wasn't just stress, it was coming home. That doorway had become a powerful anchor in his brain, linking home with cookies. Maybe your trigger is sitting at your desk, where scrolling through your phone becomes automatic. Or maybe it's the moment you get into your car after work, the commute wind down that turns into mindless shopping on your phone. Now let's talk emotional triggers. These are the internal states that set habits in motion. Stress, boredom, loneliness, even happiness can be triggers. For Alex, after years of ignoring it, he realized the cookies weren't just about hunger. They were his brain's way of coping with the emotional fatigue of his job. When he walked in the door, his brain whispered, "Here's comfort, here's control," and he'd give in. For some of you, it might be reaching for a cigarette when you're anxious, or overeating when you're lonely, or binge-watching TV when you're overwhelmed. Your emotions are not your enemy. They're a map. Study them, learn their patterns. And then there are social triggers. Humans are social creatures, and our habits often copy others. A late-night text from a colleague might pull you into checking work emails on the weekend. An invitation to a party could trigger that habit of overdrinking. Or maybe your spouse's habit of complaining about their day has trained your brain to react with frustration. Social triggers are powerful because they come with a built-in pressure to conform. But here's the truth. You are not a slave to your social environment. You can choose to unlearn those associations. So how do you find your triggers? The answer is in observation. Start today with habit tracking. For the next 7 days, write down every time you fall into a bad habit. Not just the act, but the exact moment it begins. What were you thinking? How did you feel? Where were you? Who was around? This isn't about judgment, it's about discovery. Think of yourself as a scientist studying your own behavior. Let me give you a template to use. Every time a bad habit starts, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. Where was I? The environment. 2. What was I feeling? The emotion. 3. What did I think was going to happen? The expectation. For example, say you're procrastinating on your projects. When you fill this out, you might realize you always start procrastinating after a coffee break. That's your environmental trigger. Coffee time equals avoidance. The emotion was boredom, and your brain thought, I'll just check one email and everything will be okay. These patterns will rise to the top quickly if you commit to tracking them. Now here's the real magic. Once you map your triggers, you can start to reprogram them. Let's revisit Alex. After tracking his trigger, homecoming plus stress, he did something radical. He changed his routine. Instead of rushing home and slamming the door, he started taking a 10-minute walk after work. He gave himself time to decompress. Then, when he walked into his house, his brain no longer linked door with cookies. He added a new ritual, brewing a cup of tea while he reviewed his day. That small shift rewired his brain. Your journey will look different, but the principle stays the same. For emotional triggers, ask yourself, am I using this habit to escape or express something? Journal like crazy. What emotions are buried here? For social triggers, build a habit antidote. If a friend's negativity pulls you into a spiral of self-doubt, create a buffer. Remind yourself of your worth before engaging. Or walk away. You have permission to protect your mental space. And here's the thing, this process is not about being perfect. You will have days where you mistrack a trigger. You will relapse. But every time you observe, you build self-awareness, the ultimate weapon against bad habits. I want you to visualize your triggers right now. Close your eyes. Think about the last time you slipped into a bad habit. Picture the room, the feeling, the time of day. Ask yourself, what's the cue? Is it the clock ticking late at night, the ache of loneliness, the smell of a coffee shop that makes you open your phone? See it, feel it, own it. Because here's the truth. The second you understand a trigger, you've already broken its power. You've given yourself a chance to say, stop, I choose differently now. So start small. Track one habit this week. Be relentless about asking why. If you slip, don't curse yourself. Thank yourself. You've gathered data. Use it. Remember, this is not a sprint. It's a transformation. By the end of this chapter, you're not just identifying triggers. You're rewriting the blueprint of your life. You're becoming the master of that first moment instead of the prisoner of it. Now pick up your notebook. Start writing. And remember, the greatest strength in overcoming bad habits isn't willpower, it's understanding. And you've already taken the first step today. One trigger at a time, you'll reclaim your power. I promise you, the best version of yourself is waiting on the other side of this work. Let's find the triggers and crush the habits together. Welcome to a chapter that will unlock the most transformative strategy in your journey to break free from bad habits, breaking the habit cycle. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a river, watching the current carry leaves in a predictable path. Your habits are like those leaves, drifting effortlessly along a well-worn route. But what if you could change the direction of the water? That's what we're doing here. We're reshaping the flow of your automatic behaviors. Let's start by understanding the mechanism of habits. Every habit is built on a simple neurological loop. Cue, routine, reward. A cue, a trigger like a specific time, place, emotion, or action, triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. The routine is the action itself. And the reward is your brain's payoff that reinforces the habit. For years, this loop operates silently, like an invisible puppeteer controlling your actions. But here's the good news. If you can disrupt this cycle, you can rewrite it. Let me share a story you'll relate to. Meet Mike, a 38-year-old marketing executive who battled a nightly habit of scrolling endlessly on his phone right after dinner. I know it's wasting my time, he'd say, frustrated. But the moment I finish my meal, I just pick up the phone like I'm on autopilot. Mike's habit was anchored by his routine. The cue was the end of dinner, the routine was the phone scrolling, and the reward was the escape from the stress of his day. He tried to fight it, locking his phone in a drawer or telling himself to be better, but nothing stuck. Then he did something different. Mike began asking himself a simple question. What am I really craving in these moments? He realized the reward wasn't the phone itself. It was the distraction it provided. So he experimented with replacing the routine. Instead of picking up his phone, he started journaling for 15 minutes. The cue remained the same, But the new routine, writing down his thoughts, gave him the same reward. A mental pause from the day. Over time, his brain rewired its expectations. What once felt impossible, putting down the phone, became second nature. How can you replicate Mike's breakthrough? Let's break it down into 3 actionable strategies. First, uncover the cue. This is the starting point. Your cues are usually one of 5 things: a time of day, a location, an emotion, an action, or the presence of another person. Keep a habit journal for 2 weeks. For every urge you feel, write down the situation you're in, your emotions, and whether anyone else was there. Patterns will emerge. Maybe you reach for a cigarette only when you're stressed at your office desk, or you snack late at night while feeling lonely. The more precisely you identify the cue, the better you'll be able to change the cycle. Second, insert a pause between cue and routine. Habits thrive in automaticity. Your brain doesn't need to think about them. It just reacts. To change that, create a deliberate pause. Let's say your cue is feeling anxious before meetings and biting your nails. The next time you notice that urge, stop and take 20 seconds to breathe deeply. Count to 10, then do it again. That brief moment of awareness interrupts the habit loop. In that space, choose a new action. Squeeze a stress ball, sip water, or do a quick stretch. Action becomes intentional, not habitual. Third, replace the routine with a satisfying new behavior. The secret here lies in the reward. Don't sabotage your brain by swapping a cookie with a piece of kale if the reward you're craving is comfort. Instead, find an equally rewarding alternative. If your old habit was smoking, to gain a moment of quiet, try chewing gum or stepping outside for a breath of fresh air. If your late-night snack is about comfort, swap the chips for a warm drink and a few pages of a book. Your brain will quickly learn that the new routine can deliver just as much satisfaction. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat this process. Breaking the habit cycle can feel like waging war against a ghost. It takes persistence. Mike had days when the old urge to scroll crashed back in, stronger than ever. When relapses happened, he didn't quit. He asked himself, what's the cue this time? Did I forget to track it earlier? Each setback became a learning experience. That's the beauty of this strategy. You're not fighting yourself. You're solving a problem, step by step. Here's your challenge today. Pick one habit you want to change. For 3 days, practice the following. 1. Write down the cue, routine, and reward. 2. When the cue arises, pause for 20 seconds. 3. Replace the routine with something new that gives you the same reward. Progress is not linear, and relapses are not failures. They are data points. Each time you interrupt the cycle, you weaken the old habit's grip and strengthen your capacity for change. You see, my friend, the habit cycle is a loop, and loops can always be rewired. You have the power to step out of the current and create something new. The next time you find yourself sliding back into an old pattern, remember Mike. Remember how he chose to write instead of scroll, and how that small change became a ripple of transformation in his life. So let's stop waiting, stop hoping, stop battling with guilt. Let's become architects of our routines. The tools are here, the science is clear, all that's left is to take action. You've got this. Break the cycle. Change the story. And remember, you're not just breaking a habit, you're building a life of intention, one small victory at a time. You've taken the first incredible steps in your journey, understanding how habits form, identifying your triggers, and learning to break the cycle. But now, my friend, it's time to dig deeper. Chapter 4 is where everything changes. This is where you meet yourself in the mirror with honesty, curiosity, and courage. Today, we talk about mastering self-awareness, the silent warrior in your battle against bad habits. Let me ask you, when was the last time you truly observed yourself without judgment? Not the rush of self-criticism, not the whirlwind of excuses, but a quiet moment where you simply saw what you were doing, how you were feeling, and why. If you're like most people, that moment might feel impossible. But here's the truth. Self-awareness is the bridge between being a prisoner to your habits and becoming their master. Let me share a story that changed my perspective forever. A few years ago, I met a man named Alex who struggled with overeating. He tried every diet, every detox, but nothing stuck. One day, he decided to try something radical. He sat at his kitchen table with a notebook and simply watched himself eat. No rules, no guilt, just observation. He noticed how the stress of his day would knot his chest, how he'd reach for chips or cookies as if they were a lifeline. But here's what shifted everything. He didn't blame himself. He didn't scold the stressed version of himself who craved comfort. Instead, he saw it. He felt the impulse as a separate entity from his identity. That simple act of non-judgmental observation created space between the trigger and the habit. And in that space, choice was born. This, my friends, is mindfulness. It's not about meditating for hours or finding a serene mountaintop. It's about developing the superpower to notice what's happening in your body, mind, and emotions in the moment, without labeling it as good or bad. When you catch yourself scrolling mindlessly through your phone before bed, don't say, "I'm weak." Instead, say, "I notice my hand moving toward the device. How does my body feel? What am I really craving in this moment?" The shift from judgment to curiosity is where transformation begins. Here's your first challenge. Practice the 3-second pause. The next time you feel the urge to act on an old habit, whether it's biting your nails, yelling at a colleague, or reaching for that sugary snack, stop. Just 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, ask yourself, what am I experiencing right now? What physical sensations are present? What emotion is bubbling up? If you're struggling to focus, here's a powerful grounding technique. Name 3 things you can see, 2 things you can feel, and 1 thing you can hear. This simple act roots you in the present, cutting through the automatic pilot that drives your bad habits. Now let's talk about your most powerful tool, the habit journal. Alex used one, you can too. Grab a notebook, or your phone if that feels more natural, and for the next week, write down exactly what happens during your most challenging moments. Not in a vague, "I had a rough day" way, but with surgical precision. If you find yourself procrastinating on a task, write it down. What was I doing? What was the first sign the urge appeared? What did my body feel like? What was playing in my mind? Later, circle back and look for patterns. You might see, for example, that 80% of your procrastination spikes after you check social media for 10 minutes. Now you're not just fighting a habit, you're decoding a system. Don't worry about writing beautifully. Don't worry about grammar. This is for you. Think of it as detective work. One client of mine used her journal to uncover that her nightly wine habit was never really about winding down. It was about the exact moment her daughter went to bed. She realized the wine was a distraction from feelings of loneliness and unresolved guilt about work. Once she saw this, the habit lost its hold over her. But here's where many people stumble. They stop at the journal and forget the most vital step: reflection. Every Sunday evening, set aside 10 minutes to review your week. What surprised you? What did you notice about your triggers? What moments of clarity did you experience? Celebrate even the smallest victories. Did you pause before reacting to a frustrating situation for the first time? That's a win. Did you notice a trigger you hadn't before? That's progress. Now let's talk about the practice of staying present. Your bad habits thrive in your autopilot brain. They love it when you're distracted, overwhelmed, or disconnected from your body. But when you're fully present, you create a firewall. Try this. When you feel the urge to act on a habit, close your eyes and bring your attention to your breath for 30 seconds. Not to fix the urge, but to simply be with it. Notice the rise and fall of your chest. Feel the air on your skin. That act of coming home to your body interrupts the chain reaction of craving and action. This is how you rewire your brain, one moment at a time. You're not trying to become a better version of yourself. You're learning to see yourself with radical honesty and compassion. You're building the muscle of self-awareness to notice the triggers, interrupt the impulse, and choose a new path. So I'll leave you with this mindset shift. Your bad habits are not who you are. They are behaviors that have formed in response to certain conditions. And when you shine the light of self-awareness on them, those conditions begin to dissolve. Next week, we'll dive into the incredible science of willpower, how to build it, store it, and use it like a reservoir in your most critical moments. But for now, take a deep breath, grab your journal, and start observing. You are not your impulses. You are the observer. And that, my friend, is the beginning of freedom. Imagine this. You've set your alarm for an early morning run, the one you vowed to stick to for weeks. Your phone buzzes. Do you hit snooze or leap out of bed? You know what's at stake. Habits like these demand willpower, a muscle that can weaken or strengthen depending on how you use it. But here's the truth. Willpower isn't just a fleeting burst of determination. It's a reservoir you build, and today I'm going to teach you how to fill it so you never run dry. Let's talk about you, not the version of you that falters at the vending machine, but the one who's ready to master self-control. Willpower is not a myth or a magical trait reserved for the disciplined few. It's a skill we all can grow, and science shows it depends on 3 pillars: sleep, diet, and exercise. Let me break it down. First, picture your brain as a high-performance car. Would you fuel it with subpar gasoline and expect it to race? Probably not. Yet so many of us do this when we skimp on sleep. Studies show that even one night of poor sleep reduces your brain's glucose metabolism in the prefrontal cortex, the very area responsible for decision-making and self-control. I know a client who used to snack mindlessly after work, reaching for sugary treats every afternoon. When he committed to 7 hours of sleep nightly, the cravings vanished. "I wake up now knowing I can say no," he told me. "That's the power of rest." Let's talk about food next. If willpower is a muscle, your diet is the protein powder it needs to grow. Ever notice how you're either overly aggressive on your diet or completely derailed after a donut? That's because refined sugar crashes your glucose levels, leaving you craving more. Your brain needs steady energy. Prioritize protein, fiber, and healthy fats. When my father adopted a diet rich in eggs, nuts, and vegetables, he told me, "I used to struggle with temptation every day. Now it just feels unnecessary." Your choices fuel your resistance. But what about when you're already starving? I'll never forget a story from a nurse I met. She'd work 12-hour shifts, grabbing fast food at noon, and by evening, she'd emotionally eat the entire pizza she brought home. When she shifted to packing a balanced lunch, grilled chicken, quinoa, and greens, something shifted. "I wasn't bad. I was just running on fumes," she said. Your willpower isn't failing you when you're starving. It's being drained by your own hunger. Now, let's get physical. Exercise isn't just about fitting into your jeans. It's about training your brain to endure. When I was training for my first marathon, I noticed something strange. The days I ran, my ability to resist distractions skyrocketed. The fatigue hit after the run, sure, but my mental energy before? Unshakable. Scientists call this the endurance effect. Exercise increases focus and energy by boosting neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine. A 2016 Harvard study found that people who exercised 3 times a week showed 22% greater self-control in habit-breaking challenges than those who didn't. But here's the game changer: timing. Your willpower isn't constant. It ebbs and flows with your circadian rhythm. If you've ever tried to quit social media and caught yourself doom scrolling at 10 p.m., this is why. Your brain is depleted after a long day. Your peak energy hours for most people are early morning or late afternoon. Use this. Schedule your most challenging tasks, like a grueling workout or a critical decision, during your personal energy highs. Let me share a real breakthrough. A friend of mine, a mother of 3, struggled to break her late-night YouTube habit. She'd tell herself, "Tomorrow I'll stop," but the cycle never ended. Then she tried this. She wrote down every time she reached for her phone at night. Over a week, she realized her strongest moments were between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. She shifted her goal-setting ritual into that window, meditating, planning meals, writing in a journal. By noon, she'd already done the work she once promised herself she'd do later. The habit of late-night distraction faded, not because she forced it, but because she met her energy where it lived. This is the genius of willpower management. It's not about brute force. It's about working with your body, not against it. Build your reserves. Rest so deeply you feel your self-control recharge. Fuel your body until your brain is a fortress of discipline. Move your body until your determination turns unshakable. And schedule your wins during peak hours, because discipline shouldn't be a battle. It should be a rhythm. And here's the final truth I want you to carry. Willpower is not finite. You don't have low willpower. You have a willpower strategy that needs refining. Every choice you make, whether it's skipping a second slice of cake, going to bed 30 minutes earlier, or walking instead of driving, is a brick in the fortress of your future. So let me ask you, what's one choice you can make today to strengthen that fortress? Maybe it's a lunchtime walk. Maybe it's setting a 9 p.m. shutdown to sleep. Maybe it's scheduling your toughest habit-breaking moment when your energy is at its highest. Whatever it is, do it without waiting for the perfect moment. Willpower isn't a gift, it's a system, and you're now holding the blueprint. You've got this, not because you're perfect, but because you're willing to build a better you. One choice, one habit, one powerful decision at a time. You've probably heard the phrase, Rome wasn't built in a day. But do you believe it? Because for many of us, when we decide to break a bad habit, we look for quick fixes. We imagine ourselves as a blank slate. Reset, reboot, start over, and we throw everything we know out the window. We cancel our gym membership, vow to go cold turkey with chocolate, or promise to become a monk of sleep hygiene. But then, 3 days later, we're back where we started. Why? Because the human brain wasn't designed for all-or-nothing transformations. It was built for consistent, incremental growth. And that's the power of small changes. Let me tell you about a client I once worked with. Let's call him Marcus. He had battled insomnia for years. He'd tried every cure you could imagine, buying $500 mattresses, eliminating caffeine by sundown, even trying meditation retreats. Nothing stuck, and every time he'd try too hard, he'd sabotage himself. One night, he came to me in defeat, but also curiosity. What if, he said, I just focus on one tiny change? Maybe not the whole, bed at 10, up at 6, routine. What if I start by just not scrolling my phone for 5 minutes before bed? I said, that's genius. 2 weeks later, he texted me, I'm now asleep by 11 most nights. I can't believe I got here by starting with 5 minutes less screen time. This is the magic of small changes. You don't need to rip your life up by the roots. You need to plant a new seed, one that grows by compounding over time. Let's break this down. Why do drastic overhauls fail? Because they ask you to fight against every part of your brain at once. That habit you're trying to break? It's not just a bad choice. It's a neural pathway, a dopamine trigger, a psychological refuge. Trying to destroy it all at once is like trying to unlearn how to ride a bike by burning the bicycle. It doesn't work. But if you instead tweak your environment, adjust your triggers, and build new associations, like Marcus did with his phone, your brain adapts. You're rewiring it in a way that feels natural, not forced. This brings us to a crucial concept, SMART goals. You've probably heard of them before, but let me reframe them in the context of habit change. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Let's take smoking as an example. If your goal is simply, I want to quit smoking, the brain shrugs. But if it's, I'll reduce the number of cigarettes I smoke by 1 per day for the next 14 days, that's a SMART goal. It's specific, 1 fewer cigarette. Measurable, track it daily. Achievable, tiny, doable step. Relevant, directly targets the habit. And time-bound, 14 days. This kind of goal creates momentum. It builds evidence in your mind that change is possible. And each small win, each cigarette not smoked, each hour your fingers don't reach for a pack, strengthens the new neural pathways. But here's the secret. The power of small changes lies in their cumulative effect. Let's say your goal is to stop mindlessly snacking late at night. A drastic approach would be to say, I'm never eating again after dinner. That's unsustainable. But what if you start by eating dinner 30 minutes earlier? Then, add a 10-minute walk after dinner. Then, keep a glass of water nearby as a snack time alternative. Each adjustment is tiny, but together, they create a cascade of progress. By the time you've made 5 or 6 of these small changes over weeks, you're no longer snacking. You didn't will yourself to stop overnight. You gently but persistently redirected your habits until they no longer served you. And consistency? That's the real hero here. Think of your brain as a river. It follows the path of least resistance. If you try to dam the river all at once with a giant wall, it'll find a way around or flood the whole system. But if you redirect the flow gradually, moving stones, altering the banks, the river learns to flow in your direction. Small changes are the stones. Consistency is the current. Over time, the river becomes unrecognizable. I want you to think of one habit you want to break. It could be anything. Now ask yourself, what is the smallest action I can take today to shift this habit? If it's anger management, maybe it's taking a 3-second pause before reacting. If it's procrastination, starting with just 2 minutes of work when you feel like avoiding. The key is to make it so easy that failure isn't an option. Easy enough that you never say, "I'll try harder tomorrow." And here's where real-life transformations happen. I once met an older gentleman named Henry who wanted to quit his coffee addiction. He didn't try to go cold turkey. Instead, he started adding a splash of almond milk to his first cup each day. The next week, he switched to decaf. By week 6, he was drinking less sugar and milk. By month 3, he'd eliminated coffee entirely. By tricking his palate into thinking the same experience was still there. You see, when you embrace small changes, you avoid the all-or-nothing trap. You stop seeing progress as a mountain to climb and start seeing it as a staircase to build. Each step is manageable. Each step proves your ability to change. Every time you take action, you're not just fixing a behavior. You're proving to yourself, again and again, that you can rewrite your life. So I want you to stop looking for the big, bold, life-changing move. It's not in a new app, a detox, or a self-help book. It's in the quiet choices. The 500 extra steps you take each day. The 5 minutes of meditation. The 1 less drink you order. The way you pause before hitting reply all. These are the moments where transformation lives. Your brain doesn't care about your intentions. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. Setbacks and relapses are not failures. They are not the end of your journey. They are simply stepping stones on the path to a better version of yourself. Think of it like climbing a mountain. You're halfway up, pushing hard, when suddenly a loose rock shifts beneath your boot. You slip. Your heart races. You feel shame. But here's the truth. You didn't fall off the mountain. You just shifted your grip. And on the other side of that shift, you'll find a new way forward. We are not robots. We are human beings, wired with emotions, cravings, and moments of weakness. The habit you're trying to break, it's not fighting you. You're 2 parts of a whole, wrestling for control. And in that battle, you will stumble. But every time you rise again, you grow stronger. Let me share a story to prove it. There was a man named Alex, no, not the one you're thinking of, who had spent 3 years battling a gambling addiction. He was on track. He had therapy, a support group, and a plan. 3 weeks before his 3-year sobriety anniversary, he relapsed. He lost everything, his car, his savings. The look of disappointment on his loved ones' faces nearly broke him. But here's what Alex did next. He picked up the phone, called his sponsor, and said, "I'm back. This doesn't define me. It's part of the process." Within days, he was cleaning out his old debts, volunteering at a recovery center, and rebuilding his life. 3 years later, he runs a nonprofit that helps others through the exact same setbacks he once faced. You see, the difference between those who quit and those who thrive isn't perfection. It's how we respond to the slip. And here's the good news. There are tools to recover from setbacks faster than you ever imagined. First, take the 5-second rule. When you relapse, whether it's reaching for your phone at 2 a.m., indulging in unhealthy food, or procrastinating on your goals, immediately stop, take a breath, and say the words, "I'm here to start again." Count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and take one action toward your better self. That could be as simple as journaling what triggered the relapse, calling a trusted mentor, or walking outside to reset your mindset. Action is your anchor. Without it, doubt and shame take over. Second, ask yourself, what's one thing I can do to get back on track right now? That question cuts through the chaos. Suppose you've procrastinated on your fitness routine for days. One thing might be showing up to the gym for 10 minutes. If that's too much, one thing could be stretching for 3 minutes. You don't need a grand gesture. Small wins rebuild your confidence. But here's what you must remember. Recovery is not just about action, it's about how you talk to yourself. That's where self-compassion comes in. You are not a failure. You are a human learning in real time. Let me tell you about a woman I'll call Jordan. She spent years battling perfectionism. Every time she missed a day of her morning meditation practice, she would fall into a spiral of self-criticism. "I'm weak," she'd say. "I'll never get it together." And that self-loathing led to more missed days, more shame, and a broken spirit. Then her therapist gave her a powerful assignment. Every time she relapsed, she had to write herself a letter, as if she were writing to a dear friend who was hurting. She practiced empathy, kindness, and understanding. Imagine that. She stopped punishing herself and started comforting herself. Within weeks, her relapses became lighter, her motivation stronger. She learned that treating herself like a cherished friend, not a critic, was the key to lasting change. So here's your challenge. When you fall short, pause and ask, would I speak to my best friend the way I'm speaking to myself right now? If the answer is no, change your tone. Replace "I'm a failure" with "I'm learning." Swap "I can't do this" with "I'm doing this step by step." Your words shape your reality. And remember, every setback is a chance to refine your strategies. Ask yourself, what does this relapse teach me? Maybe the trigger wasn't the stress you thought it was. Maybe your environment needs a fresh overhaul. Let's say you relapsed on a diet because you skipped breakfast and were hungry by 3 p.m. That's not a failure. It's a sign your plan needs a tweak. Pack a healthy snack. Adjust the schedule. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to adapt. Chapter 8. Designing a Supportive Environment. Let me ask you this. How many times have you tried to break a bad habit only to feel like you're fighting a losing battle? You're doing all the right things, building willpower, recognizing triggers, and planning small changes. But somewhere, you hit a wall. Why? Because you're forgetting something critical, your environment. The truth is, we are products of our surroundings. Your habits aren't just about you. They're about the world you live in. And the good news? You have the power to redesign that world so it supports you, not sabotages you. Let me tell you about Alex. 3 years ago, they were stuck in a cycle of procrastination. Every night, they'd sit at their desk, open their laptop, and within minutes, doom scrolling on social media would consume them. No matter how many resolutions they made, the compulsion returned. But one day, Alex had a revelation. Their desk wasn't just a workspace. It was a minefield of temptation. Scattered were old coffee cups, a pile of ungraded work, and worse, their phone sat face up, glowing with notification after notification. The environment was engineered to kill focus, so Alex decided to rebuild it. They cleared the desk, placed the phone in another room, and added a fidget spinner to their workspace to channel restless energy. They also joined a productivity group where members shared progress updates weekly. Within weeks, their focus transformed. By redesigning their environment, they stopped tempting themselves. That's the power of what we're going to unpack today. Think of your environment as a chessboard. Every habit you form, every choice you make, is a move on that board. Bad habits thrive when the board is stacked against you. But when you clear the clutter, the literal and social clutter, you play on level ground. Here's how to start. First, eliminate habit-enabling cues in your physical space. Habits are activated by cues in our surroundings. A half-empty snack bag on the coffee table is a cue to eat. A dusty fitness magazine buried under paperwork is a cue to avoid working out. Take a hard look at your home and workspace. What visual triggers lead you into bad habits? I'm talking about the obvious stuff, like a TV in your home office if you're trying to work efficiently, or the subtler things, like a toxic positivity poster in your room that makes you feel awful when you're not constantly happy. Remove or rearrange these elements. Let's make it actionable. If you're combating a screen time habit, hide your devices. Use a drawer to store your phone when working on important tasks. Charge it in another room overnight. If you want to eat healthier, don't stock junk food in your fridge. Replace snack drawer candy with nuts or cut-up veggies. Make the path of least resistance the right path. Now, let's talk about architecting your space for success. Your environment should act as a habit incubator. If you want to read more, Keep books on your coffee table and bedstand. If you're training for a marathon, hang your training shoes by the door so they're the first thing you see in the morning. Studies show that people who place keys near the door are less likely to lose them. Use these principles to your advantage. But here's where it gets even more powerful. Your social environment is just as critical. Humans are social creatures. Our habits don't exist in a vacuum. Ask yourself, who in my life pulls me closer to the goals I've set? Who drags me back into old patterns? I once met a man who struggled with smoking for decades. Then he moved, joining a community of people who prioritized outdoor activities. He started hiking with folks who didn't have a cigarette in sight. Within a year, he was smoke-free. He didn't quit by willpower alone. He replaced the water he was swimming in. This is why accountability partners matter. Find a friend or join a group where progress is celebrated and slip-ups are met with encouragement, not judgment. If you're quitting sugar, bring a coworker along with you. Swap daily desserts for an afternoon walk. If you're trying to write a book, find a writer's circle. The more people who see your goals, the more likely you'll succeed. Let's build this into a plan. First, commit to a physical audit of your home and work areas. Ask, what in this space is pulling me back into bad habits? Then, rearrange or remove those elements. Second, design habit signals. Place reminders of your goals in high-traffic areas. A vision board in your kitchen, a motivational quote on your computer screen, or a habit tracker by your doorway. These signals train your brain to associate your environment with growth. Finally, curate your community. This isn't about pushing people away, but choosing wisely who you open up to. Share your goals with someone who will text you to ask, "Did you hit your workout today?" rather than send a late-night pizza emoji. Build bonds with people who are already moving in the direction you want to go. Want to learn a language? Join a conversation group. Want to cut back on alcohol? Spend time with friends who host game nights instead of happy hours. Here's the non-negotiable takeaway. Your environment isn't neutral. It's either building you or breaking you. Every bad habit you're struggling with has a trail that leads back to your surroundings. And if that's true, then you hold the power to redesign that trail. Let me end with this. You've spent the past 7 chapters arming yourself with knowledge, awareness, and discipline. Now you're learning to change the very system you operate in. This shift doesn't just make your goals easier, it makes them inevitable. Because when your environment becomes an ally, you're no longer fighting against yourself. You're riding a current that carries you toward the person you want to become. So go into your home, look at your desk, your kitchen, your bedroom. Ask, would this space be someone else's if they were serious about this change? Then take action. And remember, when you're done reshaping the physical world, look inward to the social one. You're not alone in this. Reach out, build a tribe, join a cause, find your people. The next chapter will show you how to track all these changes and celebrate your... Have you ever felt like you're stuck in a loop? Trying to break free from a bad habit, yet somehow slipping back into old patterns? You're not alone. The road to change is rarely a straight line. It's more like a winding path, with detours, speed bumps, and the occasional pothole. But here's the secret everyone forgets to tell you. Progress isn't about being perfect. It's about paying attention. It's about showing up for yourself, even when the journey gets messy. And the most powerful way to stay on track is to track your progress and celebrate every win, no matter how small. Let me tell you a story. I once met someone who had struggled with chronic procrastination for years. Every time they set a goal, they'd push it aside until the last possible moment. Their life was a cycle of panic and self-criticism. But one day, they decided to try something different. They started with a habit tracker in their phone, a simple app where they logged each morning whether they completed their top priority task. For the first 2 weeks, they missed most of their targets. But instead of quitting, they celebrated the days they succeeded. One week, they went from 5 wins to 10. The next week, they hit 13. Over time, they stopped counting the bad days and started focusing on the upward trend. Today, that person is in a place they never imagined, building a successful career, leading with confidence, and finally free from the grip of procrastination. What changed? Tracking, celebrating, a shift from perfection to progress. Here's the truth. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. Imagine driving to a destination without a GPS. You'd have no idea how close you were to your goal, right? Yet, so many people try to tackle habit change without a map. That's where habit tracking systems come in. They're not just about ticking boxes, they're about giving yourself real-time feedback. And the more you track, the more you'll begin to see patterns, like when you're most likely to slip up, or which situations trigger relapses. Knowledge is power, my friend. But here's where many people fall short. They focus on results instead of behavior. They obsess over the number on the scale, the time on their fitness tracker, or whether they've won or lost a particular day. Here's the key. Track how you behave, not just what you achieve. For example, if your goal is to quit smoking, don't just mark the days you're smoke-free. Track daily actions, like sipping water when cravings hit, or practicing deep breathing to manage stress. These are the building blocks of lasting change. Let's get practical. Start with a system that fits your life. Are you a numbers person? Try a habit tracking app that graphs your progress over weeks and months. Do you prefer something tactile? Grab a journal and draw a sticker chart. The goal isn't complexity, it's consistency. Some people track with a simple yes or no each day. Others use color-coded calendars to visualize their wins. Experiment and find what works for you. But here's the real magic. Celebrate, not just when you reach the finish line, but every step of the way. When you mark 3 consecutive days of healthy choices, throw yourself a mini victory dance. When you crush a week where you resisted old habits, treat yourself to a movie or your favorite music. Your brain is wired to remember rewards. Every celebration plants a flag on your journey, making it more likely you'll stay committed to the climb. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but what if I relapse? What if I miss a day or fall back into old patterns? Good question. Newsflash, you're human. Mistakes happen. But here's how the pros approach setbacks. They treat them as data, not defeat. When my client who battled procrastination had off days, they'd circle the missed entries and ask, "Why did I skip this task today?" Often they'd find the answer in their environment, like a cluttered workspace or too many distractions. Then they'd adjust and keep charging. And this brings me to my final point. Track your mindset as much as your habit. If you start feeling like a failure after a slip-up, write it down. If you catch yourself thinking, "This is pointless," mark it in your journal. The goal isn't just to measure external behavior, but to become a student of your internal dialogue. So here's your challenge. This week, set up your tracking system. Make it simple. Use an app, a calendar, or that note on your phone, whatever you'll actually stick with. Log each of your key behaviors daily. And every time you hit a small milestone, 2 days in a row, a week of consistency, do something fun. Text a friend. Burn a candle. Dance like nobody's watching. Remember, permanent change isn't built in a single moment. It's built in the daily decisions, the unnoticed shifts in behavior, and the courage to celebrate the hard-fought wins. You are not here to be perfect. You're here to be persistent. So track, celebrate, repeat. Because when you measure your progress and honor your victories, you're not just changing habits. You're changing your entire relationship with yourself. And trust me, that's a win worth savoring. You've made it to the final chapter, a triumph in itself. By now, you've unpacked the science of habit formation, dismantled the chains of triggers and cycles, and built the resilience to navigate setbacks. But here's the truth. The most powerful transformation happens when you move beyond simply changing a behavior and instead become a new version of yourself. That's where permanence begins. Let me share a story. A few years ago, I met someone who'd struggled with chronic procrastination for decades. Imagine this. Every morning, they'd tell themselves, "Today is the day I'll get my life together." And yet, by noon, they'd be scrolling through their phone, feeling defeated. Then, something shifted. They started small, just 5 minutes of focused work each morning. But here's what made it stick. They tied that 5 minutes to a morning ritual. The second their coffee was brewed, they sat at their desk. No exceptions. Over time, the act of sitting down became automatic. But more than that, they began to see themselves not as a procrastinator, but as someone who values progress over perfection. The habit wasn't just about working, it was about identity. This is the power of ritualization. Habits don't stick when you force them. They thrive when they're woven into the fabric of your daily life. Think of a ritual as a non-negotiable hook. For some, it's brushing their teeth before bed. For others, it's a morning walk after their first cup of tea. The key: consistency in context. When you pair a habit with a specific time, place, or emotion, like gratitude journaling after dinner, or a 5-minute stretching routine when you wake up, it becomes part of your routine, not a burdensome task. But here's where many people trip up. They focus only on the what and ignore the why. Let's talk about identity shifts. Every habit reflects a deeper belief about yourself. If you want to read more, you must start to see yourself as a reader. If you want to exercise regularly, you must embrace the identity of someone who prioritizes health. This isn't vanity. It's a psychological lever. Studies show that people who define themselves as someone who exercises are far more likely to stick to a fitness routine than those who view exercise as a quote to achieve. Your habits aren't just actions, they're declarations of who you are. Now, let's address motivation. You've probably heard the saying, incentives don't last, but intrinsic motivation does. Extrinsic rewards, like money, praise, or even that feel-good checkmark on an app, can be helpful in the short term. But they're like a spark. They fade if there's no fire beneath them. What fuels lifelong change? Intrinsic rewards, the deep abiding satisfaction of aligning your actions with your values. That runner who jogs not to lose weight, but because they crave the clarity of movement. The writer who crafts stories not for fame, but because creativity is their lifeline. Ask yourself, what does this habit mean to you? How does it make you feel? When your why is rooted in joy or purpose, the struggle becomes part of the journey, not the end of it. Let me pause here and say this. You are not a machine. There will be days when motivation falters, when the ritual feels heavy, and the identity feels fragile. That's when your personal action plan steps in. Think of this as your compass for lifelong habit management. Here's how to build it. 1. Map your rituals. Write down exactly when and how you'll perform each habit. Tie them to existing routines. If you want to meditate, do it right after you turn off your alarm. If you want to drink more water, keep a bottle on your desk as you work. 2. Define your identity. Craft a single sentence that captures who you are becoming. Not a goal, an identity. For example, I am a person who values self-care, or I am a lifelong learner. Post it somewhere visible. 3. Fuel with purpose. Every time you're about to engage in a habit, ask, how does this serve the person I want to become? Let that question anchor you when temptation whispers. 4. Track mindfully, not obsessively. Use a simple tracking system, maybe a dot on a calendar, or a weekly review of progress. But remember, perfectionism is the enemy of progress. Focus on consistency, not compliance. 5. Celebrate the invisible wins. Did you resist an old urge? Did you show up for yourself when it was easy to quit? Those are victories. Acknowledge them. You're rewiring your brain. Now let me leave you with this. Permanent change isn't about being perfect. It's about being persistent. The person you are right now is a mosaic of every habit you've ever formed. The same mosaic can be reshaped, one deliberate action at a time. So take a deep breath. You've learned the science. You've faced your triggers. You've cracked the cycle. Now it's time to step into the story of who you want to become. Let your habits reflect that story. Let them be your daily proof that you are capable of transformation. And most importantly, trust the process. You've got this. The road to lasting change is long, but every step you take is a testament to your power. The world doesn't need flawless people. It needs brave ones. So go out there, build your rituals, own your identity, and let your habits be the quiet revolutions that define your life. The future you deserve starts today.